Hey y'all, it's Courtney here. I wanted to make this video today to explain some of the common terms that are used in the exercise world. They're terms that I think we throw around a lot when we're teaching people fitness, trying to get them to exercise certain ways, and they may not be very common knowledge for the average person who really doesn't know too much about fitness. So let's get started. So I made a list of possible topics or topics to go through, and I'm going to start with something that was kind of confusing for me when I first started, and that's reps and sets. Reps is short for repetitions. So when someone says, I want you to do X reps of X sets, what they're saying is the repetitions are how many times you're going to perform that particular exercise. So for example, if they say, I want you to do 12 reps of bicep curls, so you're going to do a bicep curl 12 times, and then they say, I want you to do that for 4 sets. So you do your bicep curl 12 times for your 12 reps or repetitions, and then you pause or take a break or whatever, and then you do it again, and then you pause, and then you do it again, and then you pause, and then you do it again. So that's your 4 sets of 12 repetitions. Where do you agree? So that's reps and sets. People will write it different ways. Sometimes they'll say, they'll have like on their screen, they'll say bicep curls 4 by 12. Other people will say bicep curls 12 by 4. So some people write reps first then sets, or sets first then reps. Just make sure you're clarifying. A lot of times it's pretty easy to figure out what they're talking about because no one's going to do 12 sets of 4 reps, not usually. The next thing is a superset, and this really confused me as well when I first started lifting a few years ago. A superset is where you are putting 2 exercises back to back and performing one and then the other. So for example, some people will superset 2 exercises that hit the same muscle versus supersetting 2 separate exercises that work 2 separate muscles. So some people will, like in the video that you're seeing over here, will do their however many reps of a bicep curl. That's what I'm doing in this video. And then they'll superset it with a second exercise that works a completely different muscle, like in this is a banded pull apart. So they'll perform their amount of sets with the first exercise and then go immediately into the next exercise and perform their amount of reps for that. And then there will be a pause. That's their rest or their break or however long they're doing in between their supersets, and then they'll perform it again. The next is Dropsets. Dropsets are taking a specific exercise and performing it back to back to back and dropping the weight each time. So for example, starting here with bicep curls, I think this is just an easy exercise to use as a tool. That's why I keep using bicep curls. You'll start with your amount of reps with a 10, like in this. And then when you're done, you'll go on to a 5, and then when you're done, you'll go on to like a 2.5, because I have plates and that's what I was using in this particular clip. In terms of how many sets and reps you do is really going to depend on your training style. Some people say that your first weight, so the 10 pounds that I was using, that you do that into failure. So meaning that your last 2 or 3 reps are so hard that you're almost not able to perform it. You're starting to throw the weight up because you can't quite get it up. Other people will say, here's how many reps we're doing for our first set or our first weight, and each consecutive one we'll do until we can't do it anymore. And then some people will have their last weight be just air. And I like to do that when I do drop sets with your shoulders. Because after you're doing like lateral or front raises, when you get to that last bit where you say you're doing 5 pounds for your last raise, and then you drop it and you really start burning out with no weight, it's a killer. So that's what a drop set is subsequently dropping the weight each and every set. And most people will do it just back to back to back, meaning you do your 10s, drop it, get your 5s, drop it, do your 2.5s, drop it. And that's where the name drop set comes in. The next is a compound lift. Compound lifts are just lifts that target more than one particular muscle itself. So bicep curls, you're focusing on your bicep, but there are other moves that recruit multiple muscles all at once. And I don't mean to say that a bicep curl only works the bicep, because when you get to a certain part, you're working other parts of your arm as well. But a compound movement usually recruits a lot of different muscle groups. So for example, squats, it's not just your legs. Your legs are made up of a lot of different muscles, but you're also recruiting glutes, you're recruiting quads, you're recruiting hamstrings. Some people, you're getting low back. If you're a low bar squatter, you're actually pushing your back into the bar, your bar into the back, so you've got some upper back recruitment as well. That's a good example of a compound lift. Other people will take compound lifts to say that you're doing kind of a combo of two separate lifts. So in this video, I'm squatting and then curling up the plate. So that's, you squat down, you come back up, you curl up the plate. That can also be considered a compound lift, especially if you're not someone who squats or deadlifts or does any of the other compound lifts. That's a way to incorporate an upper body and a lower body into one movement. That leads into high intensity interval training, or HIIT. So high intensity interval training is just when you're doing intervals at really high intensity. So it seems pretty straightforward, but it can be kind of wishy-washy because it encompasses a lot of things, and it's really useful. So some people will say, like, they'll do a sprint, so a 20-second sprint, and then rest for 1 minute to 3 minutes. Some people will do really intense cardio of any sort for 30 seconds and then rest for 1 minute. So the idea is that you have intervals, and some of those intervals you're resting or doing something much lower intensity, and another interval you're going just balls to the wall. That's really what high intensity means. I've used this before when doing like incline sprints, where I will sprint for 20 seconds and then stand on the edges of the treadmill so that I'm not moving at all. And in terms of how long you should rest for, is going to depend on a lot of things. Some people will use like a heart rate monitor, and they'll wait until their heart rate gets down to a certain level. So if you're sprinting and your heart rate goes up to say 160 beats per minute, which is pretty decent for, when you're really sprinting. Sometimes people will go up to like 200. It really depends on you and your athletic capacity. And they'll wait until their heart rate gets down to about 100 before doing again. So that's one way to decide how you're doing it. Other people will do their intensity, their sprint or whatever, and then they'll wait until they can easily talk. So that's how you know that you've gotten back to that state where you're recovered enough so that you're at a level where you can talk. So the next thing we're going to talk about is low intensity steady state versus medium or moderate intensity steady state. These are often abbreviated as MISS and LISS. So low intensity steady state usually refers to cardio, though this can be kind of misleading because it applies to things like walking. So walking, riding your bike, or doing an indoor bike and just kind of reading, you're just moving at a nice steady pace and you're not really working very hard. It has its time and its place in terms of fat loss and weight loss, especially for beginners, people who can't do long amounts of cardio. If you've got any sort of injury where the idea of running is just not something that's possible to you. I do steady state or low intensity steady state cardio a lot because I walk my dogs. It's something that I enjoy doing. I have to be outside, so low intensity steady state cardio is not a bad thing. Now, moderate or medium intensity steady state cardio just means that you're going a little bit harder than that. This is really a point of contention for some people because they believe that walking is low intensity steady state. Anything above walking is going to be medium intensity steady state. It's really dependent on you. When I did it a few years ago when I was doing figure, I would just, if I could watch Netflix on the Stairmaster and occasionally have a conversation with someone else, I consider that moderate intensity. Some people will say that I may have been going more towards like a higher intensity. It really depends, but that's where those terms come from. The last one that I'm going to talk about is fasted cardio. So fasted cardio is the idea that you are doing something without eating. It doesn't just apply to cardio, it can also be lifting. So you can do fasted lifting. Back when intermittent fasting was kind of just coming out and it was a pretty big deal, a lot of people did fasted training. And I'll talk about some of these diet and supplement terms in another video. This is just kind of the gym lingo here. But the fasted cardio or fasted weightlifting just means that you didn't eat anything before you went to exercise. Some people take it a little bit different and they'll say you didn't eat protein or you didn't have a carb source. So maybe you woke up and you just slammed a protein shake, so you don't have any real carbs in your system. Other people will say, will drink like BCAAs before they go and do a fasted session. So even the term fasted has its own weird definition, but the idea is that you don't have anything to burn prior to doing your exercises. So those are some of the terms that you're going to hear thrown around a lot. I think I covered some of the major ones that aren't very intuitive for new people, especially when you're, reading people's exercises, or if you're following other fitness YouTubers and they're posting their videos or their favorite exercises. Things like Supersets, Dropsets, all that stuff can be really interesting, and it's hard to determine what exactly they're talking about. So that's a good rundown with some videos. If you have any other questions, just leave them below. My next video that I'll probably do on the same topic will be talking about supplements and different types of supplements, and then also some diet terms, because sometimes we fall down that rabbit hole of talking about macros, if it fits your macros, intermittent fasting, and there's just a laundry list of terms that can be very overwhelming, and I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So if you have any questions, just comment below and I'll try and answer them. See ya!